Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Bookshelf Odyssey podcast YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be talking about biographies and what some of my favorite biographies are. To start off with, I love biographies. I love to read about the story of a person's life, especially ones that I find interesting. Some of my favorite biographies to read are biographies of Dickens, and I'm starting to find some other Victorian writers. So it's been very enjoyable to find out not just reading their work, but finding out who they are through their biographies. There's a couple I want to share with you today that are probably my top three favorite biographies, and they're very closely tied for that distinction. I want to start off with a couple of honorable mentions. One is the John Adams biography by David McCullough. And he doesn't just tell us facts about John Adams, he tells us a story of his life, of the beginning of the United States. And it's quite a remarkable biography. It won the Pulitzer Prize back when it came out, and I think deservedly so. It's a very, very well done biography. Another favorite of mine is Michael Slater's biography of Charles Dickens. That is the biography that I hold all other Dickens biographies to. Again, much like the John Adams biography, it just tells a great story of Dickens. It looks at some of his work and examines his work with his life. It's just very well done. So if you're looking for a biography of Dickens, that's one I would recommend as far as readability, as also with information. But both of those books are quite hefty, so it'll give your arms a workout if you need to read those. Another honorable mention I want to share with you, it's one I just finished reading called Not Just Jane. And this one would probably be in my top five, but I just finished it, so I need to sit with it for a while and think about it. But I wouldn't be surprised in a year or two if this wasn't on my top favorite lists of biographies. What this book is about is Shelley DeWeese writes about seven, as she calls them, seven amazing women writers who transformed British literature. We have Mary Elizabeth Braddon, Helen Maria Williams, Catherine Crowe, Charlotte Smith, Sarah Coleridge, Dinah Mullock-Craik, and Mary Robinson are the seven women. I've only heard of a few of them, and thanks to different booktube channels and some podcasts I listen to. But this is a really fascinating book that looks at these women. For instance, Catherine Crowe wrote a detective novel at least a couple of months before Edgar Allan Poe did, but he's the one who's given credit for having invented the genre of detective novel or private investigator novel. I can't remember exactly now the distinction on that, but DeWeese tries to set the record straight on some of that. Some of these ladies were quite the character. I just fell in love with them, and I can't wait to read more about these women. But I want to read to you a little bit of a lengthy passage, but how she ends this biography with her plea to read these women. She says, she asks the question, what is it going to take to resurrect these books and these writers that will get so that they can be enjoyed, today, tomorrow, and beyond. Well, she says, you, dear reader, it really takes only you and your unending capacity for love, of stories, of books, and maybe most important, of women who defy the conventions of their times in order to make their voices heard. This is what history depends on. This is what the future of literature depends on, because the words of the present are made possible by those of the past, and because the present mirrors the past. Methods of creation and distribution are changing now, in the digital age, just as they did then. Of all the wonderful things I experienced during this journey, the best occurred at the end as I stood in front of a bookshelf full of new titles, each of which introduced me to new women, new worlds, new windows into British history. It is to these treasures that I wish to turn your attention in this final moment. Find their works, whether in used bookstores or by way of the many websites that generously provide them, and then read. Open your arms to these women, just as you have, and should continue to do, with Jane and Charlotte and Emily and Marianne and Virginia. Fall in love with these women, just as I did. Embrace the fullest spectrum of female literary accomplishment you can. Allow these women to tuck in close and take your imagination to a whole new place. The only thing better than British literature is more British literature. So go, reader, rediscover it all over again. I love her plea at the end that these women have voices that must be heard. So go out and read them, share them, promote them. And I think that's what this channel and many other booktube channels are about, in part, not just celebrating great works of literature, but finding those voices that need to be heard and giving them a platform. Now, I've read some Mary Elizabeth Braddon. I would recommend her, but I'm really looking forward to reading more by these women that I knew very little about. So I'm excited to do that. Not just Jane, probably going to be one of my top favorite biographies, just because of the information it gives. So my top three, though, one I don't have with me here, and that book is called The Lady from the Black Lagoon, written by Mallory O'Meara, and it tells the story of the woman who actually designed the creature from the Black Lagoon in that famous movie from the 50s or 60s or whenever. What I love about this story is that the author, Mallory O'Meara, she involves herself in the story. It's part memoir, part biography. And I really like that style where the writer of the biography is giving you a memoir of their life along with it. And actually, all these, my top three favorite biographies have that style to them. What was moving about O'Meara's book is that she writes about the struggles that she has as a filmmaker, as somebody who's involved in creativity in Hollywood, and that she faces some of the same challenges that Millicent Patrick did, who designed the creature from the Black Lagoon. That's forgot to mention that's who the lady's name was, Millicent Patrick, and I just thought, wow, we can do better. We got to do better in our time, guys. We need to do better. In how we treat women as equals. It's stupid I have to say that, but we need to do better. So all these themes are going on in this book, and at the end of the day, it is just a well-written book. It's a well-written story. But like I mentioned, I like how Mallory O'Meara wraps herself up in her subject that she's writing about and tells of her passion and of her interest in Millicent and all the things that she's learning in life from having studied this woman. I think that's fantastic. So I highly recommend that book. One of my other favorite biographies is called The Victorian and the Romantic. I believe it was published in England as Mrs. Gaskell and Me. But it's written by Nell Stevens, who tells the story of when she was in London, and in 2013 she's writing her dissertation and begins to learn and research about Elizabeth Gaskell. It says that The Victorian and the Romantic is a moving chronicle of two women, each charting a way of life beyond the rules of her time. And again, this is kind of a memoir / biography of Elizabeth Gaskell, a memoir by Nell Stevens. I really enjoyed it. So Nell is finding kinship with Mrs. Gaskell and learning from her about helping her make decisions in her life. One of the interesting things that Nell Stevens points out is Elizabeth Gaskell's relationship with the American critic Charles Eliot Norton. And there's been a lot of talk and speculation about them and what their relationship actually was. Well, the book blurb here says that, and she writes about how her relationship with Charles Norton changed her, transformed her even. It says here that 17 years her junior, Norton was her one true love. They could not be together, and it would have been an unthinkable breach of convention, but she was by his side, and amid that splendid circle, Mrs. Gaskell knew she had reached the tip-top point of her life. Really interesting look at that relationship. So you'll have to see if you agree with Nell Stevens's conclusions or not. But it's such a moving story, and again, helping connect the present with writers of the past, and it's so good. I think my all-time favorite biography is Take Courage, Anne Bronte and the Art of Life. I can't remember if I had read Anne Bronte's work before I read this or not. The details are getting hazy, but but this book is just a phenomenal biography slash memoir written by Samantha Ellis. This is probably the only biography I actually cried at the end. And it's such a moving portrait of not just Anne Bronte, but the courage with which she had to face death, the impact that Anne Bronte had on Samantha Ellis. Samantha Ellis writes that as she started studying more about Anne, or the Bronte sisters, she found herself drawn towards Anne. So this book is divided up into chapters, and it looks at each of the main characters in Anne Bronte's life and how she related to them and what lessons we can learn. In that final chapter especially, it's called Anne, or How to Take Courage. Just moved me so much. This was one of my favorite books of the year when I read it. Certainly my all-time favorite biography. And these are three biographies I would recommend to anyone, especially to those who may not like biographies, just because they are so different. They don't just give you a bunch of dry facts. They give you a journey. They give you a story. Yeah, those are my top three favorite biographies. And I would love to hear from you if you have read those, what you think of them. I would love to hear your favorite biographies. So comment down below what biographies you have read, if you've read any of these three or four, and what you think of them. And we can keep that discussion going in the comments below. If biographies aren't your thing and you just want to say hi, go ahead and do that. Say hi below, and we'll keep this conversation going. On that note, I want to also just say thank you to everyone who started subscribing to my channel. It has meant the world to me that after only 2 videos, I already have 40 subscribers, probably a little bit more by now. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot compared to some, but hey, I'm so excited for you 40 who decided to sign up and come along with me on this book journey as we explore our bookshelves and recommend good reading to each other. So part of the reason I'm doing these videos is to make my TBR list just impossibly long. I'm looking to change it up, spice it up, whatever you want to call it. So I'd love to hear some recommendations from you, especially in this case about biographies. So go ahead, like and subscribe, share all those good things. There are links to these books in the show notes. I have an affiliate link with bookshop.org. They can help support some independent bookstores, which, as you hopefully know by now, that's a passion of mine, to support those local bookstores. We've had too many of them close and move away from where we're at. I know we're in a digital age right now, but hey, I want to help support those bookstores. And so until next time, be kind to each other, be good to yourself, and just keep reading. Take care.